Abednigo freaked out on seeing Aarda, and he screamed, "Jesus!" all of a sudden, and his fear doubled as he stood there visibly shaking. "Calm down, boy, calm down," Aarda said with a grin. The other guys in the cell couldn't even dare say a word or even look up, and the guys Aarda came with didn't look like guys who were there to play. "Please, have mercy on me, I have a family." The new guy who was brought into the cell pleaded in a rather low and shaky tone. Aarda immediately burst into laughter on hearing that, and then moved closer to the new guy. "Really? And who ordered you to speak?" Aarda quizzed, pointing the gun at the new guy. "I'm sorry, sir," the new guy pleaded again. "Oh, I hate sorries," Aarda exclaimed all of a sudden, and right before their very eyes, he shot the new guy from behind. "Let's go!" he screamed all of a sudden, and his gang members dragged Abednigo up, and he was whisked away from the police cell just like that, without his phone and his remaining property. They dumped him in the trunk of a car, and he noticed that they drove for like an hour before they finally stopped. By the time they opened the trunk of the car, he was already so exhausted and thirsty. They again dragged him out and took him to where Aarda was already standing before an uncompleted building of a story building, and on seeing him being dragged towards him, he puffed out a thick smoke of the hemp he was smoking with his head raised. "Miku!" he hailed with a grin, and then made Abednigo go on his knees as soon as he was brought before him. "Please, Aarda, forgive me, I am sorry," Abednigo pleaded. But on hearing that, Aarda raised his shirt and dragged out the pistol he had in his trousers, and then pointed it at him. "I hate sorries," he thundered at the top of his voice. Okay, easy, easy," Abednigo begged, when the gun pointed directly at his face. Aarda moved much closer to him, and then let out this devilish laughter. "Were you not surprised to see me? You think I'm one of those who can be locked up just like that and thereafter, forgotten in jail? I confided in you, even trusted you that I told you almost everything about me. But what did you do to pay me back? You deceived me. You betrayed me, Abednigo," he said, holding the gun with both hands in a very tight grip. Abednigo thought he was going to shoot. He was there, shivering and almost peeing in his shorts. "You know what's going to happen? I will not kill you for now. Let me make some money off of you first. Then, when I'm done making the kind of money I want, I will kill you like a forbidden snake," he said in a deep baritone. "Take him in and tie him up," Aarda ordered, and immediately 2 guys rushed to Abednigo and pulled him up. "Please, hold on. I need water, please," Abednigo said slowly. "I will give you water. I will even give you food. But that won't stop me from giving you a very brutal killing once I'm able to make the kind of money I want." "Okay, but can I ask you a question?" Abednigo quizzed again. "Shoot, you're still my old friend, so you can ask me anything. Don't forget that your days are numbered, though," Aarda replied. "I don't know how this may sound, though, but the boy whom you once called your son and his twin brother are missing. Please, I don't know if you have any idea of their whereabouts." "That's none of your business, you know. What did you just call him, my son?" "Well, if it may interest you, I actually killed the old lady, and I took her kids with me," Aarda revealed, puffing out smoke into the air. On hearing that, Abednigo's jaw dropped in awe. He had never been so shocked in his entire life. "What did you say?" he asked him as tears already welled up his eyes. "You heard right. You people thought you could mess with Aarda and then go scot-free. No, now things are not done that way." "Who is there?" "Bring him water now," he said to one of his gang members who was standing a bit far from them. Abednigo's head was bowed as hot tears kept rolling down. The thoughts of how the old woman must have begged Aarda to spare her life before being shot kept hovering around his head, and how she must have struggled after being shot until she gave up the ghost left him so heartbroken. One of Aarda's guys finally brought a bottle of water and then handed it over to Abednigo. He took it, stared at it for a few seconds, and then looked up at Aarda. "Oh, you think it's poisoned? No. Now I won't kill you through poison. By the time I'm done with you, that's after I must have gathered enough money from your loved ones, I will take you to the lagoon and allow this short baby of mine do the magic," he said, kissing his gun. Abednigo opened the water slowly, ignoring whatever Aarda said, and he took a sip from it. At that moment, he wished he had never met the little boy because of the way the old woman died. One of Aarda's guys came, and Abednigo was taken to an empty room which had just 2 chairs in it and was then locked up in the room. He put one of his hands on the wall and he started to weep bitterly. He thought of his mother and siblings and how worried they must have been, and he started to think of how to escape from there. He threw himself to the floor, still in tears, and then looked up and found out that a part of the room was unsealed. He looked at the chairs and then looked up again, and an idea popped into his head. "Wow!" he exclaimed with popped eyes. It happened that the top of the room where he was kept was manually sealed with sacks, but a tiny space was left open, and he suspected that it was done by Aarda and his men so they could be keeping their victims there. He then got up slowly and moved towards the chairs. He grabbed one and put it on top of the other, shaking it to know if he could climb them without falling. He grabbed both chairs and took them under the unsealed place in the room, put them on top of each other again, and slowly he successfully climbed into the ceiling through the tiny opening. He still didn't know how he was able to do so, but he would say that it was a divine intervention. He crawled from the room he was kept in the ceiling, and that was when he found out that other rooms weren't sealed. He gently climbed down in the other room and tiptoed to the window space so he could escape from there because the door space was blocked with woods. And then he started to hear their discussions from the other room close to where he was. It happened that they had already sold Damien to a Portuguese man on the island whose wife hadn't been able to give him a child after years of marriage, while Diamond was kept with Aarda's girlfriend in another state. All these Abednigo heard from his hiding, but none mentioned the whereabouts of the other girl that was with Mama. They had already shared the amount of money realized from the Portuguese man, and now they were planning on selling Diamond to a rich Hausa man from the north. And then, all of a sudden, someone ran into their room to inform them that Abednigo had escaped. And on hearing that, he jumped out through the window and ran as fast as his legs could carry him into the bush and continued running. He thought he had escaped from their den, but he started hearing noises from afar off as he ran, and when he looked back, he realized that they were already after him, and he doubled his pace. "See him! Run! Run!" He heard them scream, but he ignored them and continued running while they ran after him. He ran as fast as he could until he almost reached the highway, and he became a little elated because he knew that once he got to the highway, he must meet with a saving grace. But just a few more steps into the highway, he heard something that sounded like thunderstrike, and as soon as he heard that, he lost his balance and began to stagger. But he still managed to stagger out of the bush onto the highway, and that was the last thing he remembered. Moments later, he found himself walking in this beautiful garden with flowers around him. He was wearing a beautiful white robe, and the garden he was walking in seemed to have no end. He walked for a few minutes, and then he saw a lady approach him from nowhere, and he paused on seeing her. She walked up to him, stood beside him, and then asked him what he was doing there in the beautiful garden. "I don't know," he replied her, and then she made him open his palms. She grabbed them, and then bowed her head and breathed into his palms. And then Abednigo realized that he was struggling to open his eyes, as his whole body was aching badly. And when he opened his eyes, he found himself in the midst of a middle-aged man, a middle-aged woman, and a lady wearing a white dress. He turned and looked at them one after the other and began to wonder who they were. All of a sudden, his brain sent some signals, and he immediately remembered that he was being chased by a group of young men, and he jerked up all of a sudden. But he was held down by the middle-aged man, while the lady in the white dress sprinted out of the room all of a sudden, and his fear and worry doubled. "Calm down, calm down," the man said to him in whispers. Abednigo turned and looked at the other woman, but she only sat there, keeping a rather pitiful face. "Where am I? Let me go. What am I doing here?" He managed to ask, but he realized that he was struggling to speak, and every word that came out of his mouth was followed by a very sharp pain from behind. "Calm down. You were shot by some people, and I and my wife here rescued you," he said. "What? Where?" Abednigo struggled to ask. He was feeling so much pain all over him. "On your back," the man said, and then Abednigo turned to look behind him, but he felt a sharp pain, and he let out a scream. "Doctor! Doctor!" The man's wife called at the top of her voice, and the lady who was in a white dress ran back into the room with another young man wearing a white coat. Abednigo was made to lie on his side, and that was the last thing he remembered again. He was there for a few weeks, being taken care of by the hospital and the man's wife, but his mind wasn't at rest. It seemed as though Aarda and his men would come looking for him at the hospital, and that was the reason why he never called his people to inform them, because he thought of calling them. But the fear of Aarda and his men wouldn't let him do so, because they could come there to look for him and then attack them or something. He was even surprised that the man and his wife didn't ask him any questions about where he came from and who his family were, or ask him to give them a call or something. They took care of him until he was discharged from the hospital and then took him to their home. The following day, still in the man's house, he came into Abednigo's room to check up on him and also give him a few clothes. Then, for the first time, he asked him about his family. Abednigo was even surprised, because some people would never do what he did if they knew nothing about the person that had been receiving treatment under their care. They are fine, sir," Abednigo stuttered. "Where are they? Are they here?" the man quizzed, but Abednigo began to ask himself why the man was asking him if his family was in the same state. "No, sir, they are not here. They live a bit far from here," Abednigo said. "Are they aware that you had an accident?" "No, sir, they are not," Abednigo replied with his head bowed. "Are you for real? Why don't you take my phone and give them a call or something? Because I noticed that you didn't have a phone on you when you had the accident," he said. Abednigo was reluctant at first, and finally took the phone, and the first number he dialed was that of his mom. As soon as it rang, she picked. "Yes, who is this?" she asked. "Mama, it's me." She screamed all of a sudden on hearing his voice, and then burst into tears. "Abednigo, is that you? Is that really you?" she asked. "Yes, Ma, it's me. The police gave us a call that you were kidnapped from the police cell, and since then, your siblings and I have been going to the police station almost every week to see if they had been able to investigate and to also know the people responsible." On hearing that, Abednigo looked at the man, and he looked away. "They did? Did they give you my phone?" Abednigo asked with curiosity. "No, they didn't. They said it would help them investigate further. But where are you? And what landed you in the police cell in the first place? Mum queried. Mama, I'm fine and doing great and I will soon be home. But please, we will talk when I get home. And please, do not inform the police officers that I called you. Is anything the matter? You know you can always talk to me, and I'm your mother. Abednigo, please. What exactly is going on? Mama, don't worry, we will talk when I get back, Abednigo said, and then she exhaled. After the call, he handed the phone over to the man who had been waiting to hear something about what really happened, and Abednigo thanked him. You see, I've been meaning to ask you what exactly happened on the day we found you by the road, soaked in your own blood. You had no clothes on, just a pair of shorts, and my wife and I, without hesitation, simply because we wanted to save a dying young man, rescued you. But what I'm still shocked about is the fact that you had no clothes on. So, what exactly happened on that day? Do you mind sharing? Abednigo sighed on hearing that, and he told the man just a little of his story. But we should make a report at the police station this one, that you're beginning to feel better already. Were you not surprised that you were treated just like that without going through any protocol? Bullet wound in this country without a police report? He said with a grin. Actually, I thought about it, sir. Please, how were you able to convince the doctor to carry on with the bullet extraction without first reporting to the police and without even knowing me from anywhere? Well, my younger brother is the owner of the hospital. He suggested that, though, but somehow I asked him not to get the police involved and just do his thing. Thank you so much, sir, Abednigo said, almost prostrating before him, but he quickly reached for his hand and then pulled him back up. So, I would want us to have a heart-to-heart talk, said the man, adjusting himself on the chair he sat on, dragging it forward. Abednigo let out, taking another look at him to properly ascertain if he could be trusted. The man noticed. Come on, talk to me. You don't need to be afraid of anything, okay? Just trust me. What kind of trouble were you in? It's a long story, sir, Abednigo said. As you can see, I have no place to go, so let's talk, the man said. Well, Abednigo narrated everything to him, and he was shocked. Don't you think we should go make a report at the police station or something? If you're truly innocent, the man said. No, sir. I was in the police cell when those guys came for me, remember? What if we get there, and I'm asked to be locked up the second time? And extracting the bullet without involving the police, too, is another crime on its own. That's true, the man said with a finger under his jaw. So what do you suggest we do now? He added. Nothing, sir, because I don't even trust the police. I just need to return home and hide my head there until all this is over, Abednigo said. You're returning to your hometown, a village? The man questioned with an unsure look on his face. That's the best and only option for me now, because as it is, I wouldn't want to get myself involved in any more trouble. The man exhaled, adjusting himself again on the chair he sat on. It's okay. I totally understand if that's what you want, he said. And Abednigo nodded. A few days later, it was time for Abednigo to return home. The man again came into his room with some new clothes and shoes packed in a big shopping bag, and on seeing it, Abednigo prostrated before him and thanked him. The following day at night, Abednigo wore a hoodie on a black pair of pants, and he bade the man and his family farewell after the man gave him a huge amount of money. Abednigo arrived at the park that night and boarded a bus headed to his hometown. They reached Abednigo's hometown a few minutes past 2 a.m. He couldn't get a bike or a car to take him home as it was very late, so he stayed at the park until it was past 6 a.m. when public transport was already beginning to ply the roads in numbers. He called a bike guy. He stopped before Abednigo and asked him where he was going, and Abednigo mentioned the name of his village to him. But as soon as the bike man heard him mention the name, he shook his head and then rode off. Without bothering to ask him why he was leaving, Abednigo decided to wait for another, and immediately he sighted one from afar and signaled him to come. He told him where he was going and was already climbing the bike when the man told him that he was not going that way. "Ah, why?" Abednigo asked. "Haven't you been in this town?" "Some group of guys went to that village yesterday evening and killed a whole family. I mean a mother and her children," he revealed, shrugging his shoulders. "What?" Abednigo exclaimed, popping his eyes. "Haven't you been in town?" The bike man asked him again, staring at him from head to toe. "No, I haven't. I have been away for a long time now, and I arrived in the early hours of today, so I had to wait at the park until dawn." "Oh, I see. My brother, that was how it happened," said the bike man, shaking his head. "Wait, are you from there? And do you by any chance know which family exactly? So I'll know if my people are safe," Abednigo said with a giggle. But deep down, he was so damn scared. "No, I'm not from there. But the news was everywhere yesterday. It's a pity, please, I'll need to leave now," he said, already starting his bike, and Abednigo bade him farewell. Abednigo was there, so lost in thought, saying silent prayers that his family be safe, and at the same time looking around to see if he would see anyone from his village who would give him the full story. But he found no one. He stopped 2 more bikes who didn't agree to go his way, and at that point, Abednigo began to contemplate whether to start trekking to his village. At least, he could reach there in an hour on foot. The last bike man Abednigo called before sprinting home was the one who gave him the description of the street and was trying to describe the particular house. But Abednigo couldn't really comprehend what he was trying to say, as he stood before him already shivering. The description he gave matched Abednigo's street in the village, plus the house he was trying to describe. But Abednigo refused to believe that it had something to do with or relate to his family. He was still trying to describe it, trying to properly make Abednigo have an idea of what he was talking about. But without waiting for him to finish, Abednigo strapped his bag on his back and sprinted out of his sight and headed straight home. "Bros! Bros!" Abednigo heard the bike guy call at the top of his voice, but he ignored him and ran as fast as his legs could carry him without looking back. What could have taken him like an hour on foot before reaching home took him no less than 30 minutes. As soon as Abednigo got to the bush path leading to his street, he stopped and began to pant heavily, with sweat dripping down. He paused for a few seconds and began to hurry home. One major thing Abednigo noticed on his way home was that there were 2 women that passed him by along the bush path, but the way they responded to his greetings was quite suspicious. They looked at him and nodded when he greeted them, and then shook their heads, and that act made Abednigo double his pace again. He wanted to ask them why they responded that way, and also wanted to ask them to confirm if what he heard from the bike men in town was true. But on second thought, he decided to go confirm things himself. He sprinted home, and by the time he got home, he met some elders, both men and women, young and old, sitting before his house, with the whole place looking so gloomy and dull. He paused again, then began to approach them, walking slowly towards them and looking at their faces one after the other. "Lord, please, let this not be true," he muttered to himself, and then he burst into tears. One of the men who was sitting before Abednigo arrived, came to him and started tapping his shoulders. "Be a man," he whispered, and then Abednigo looked at him, What exactly happened? Abednigo asked. And then the man bowed his head and also shook his head. I really don't know. We started to hear gunshots last night from God knows who, but the people who saw them said they were 5 young guys. They were shooting for almost 10 minutes, and after they left, the vigilante finally came out and then sent messages across that my attention was needed here. I hurried here only to find out that your mother and siblings had been shot and killed, but one of your siblings survived and is in the hospital. No! Abednigo screamed, gripped the shirt he was wearing, and began to shred it. The people around, including the women, rushed to him, while the men made him sit on the ground, and then began to persuade him, telling him all sorts of things to pacify him that he wasn't ready to hear. Abednigo managed to get up, still in tears, and walked slowly into his house. He started to check everywhere to see if he would at least find anything that would give him a clue about the people that attacked his family. But he found none. Only bullet holes on the couches and on the wall. He fell to the ground and wailed. For more interesting episodes, type "continue" in the comments section. We love you.